What's up, guys? It's Chris again. Welcome back to VH Engines for hopefully happy Christmas Eve. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon Eastern time here, so I might be cutting into family mealtime or whatnot when you're getting this, but whatever. I don't, no big deal if you don't watch right away. Anyway, this is actually a video that it's one of those things, like I tell you, that I think about and then I forget, and then it comes up again. Like last night's little rant about the whole Turbo PSI, you're reading the comments that coming up all the time. Another thing that I get that comes up in comments all the time is talk about the H22. H22 and F22 doesn't get its fair shake. F22 and H22 doesn't get its fair shake. Well, I think that I did a decent good job of covering that topic before. I have done K versus H, or H versus K cost and performance. So that video will be linked at the end of this video. I have talked about H22 and maybe not F22 for the most part, but H22 has got, it's the H family from the Accords and whatnot. I've got their talk for me. It has a playlist. I will link that playlist at the end. People seem to not realize that I talked about this before because nobody checks playlists or whatnot. Nobody ever searches the channel. All right. Another thing is to so going through Facebook, I saw it was at 4 Piston. They posted a picture on their timeline for their Facebook page. A little something red for Christmas. The mighty H22 never got a fair shake in the ring. It had the size and muscles to do big things in motorsports. Now you scroll through the comments very quickly, and there you see somebody says very intelligently that I think that it was the stupid cylinder liner that caused most people to shy away. And 4P's response was definitely a big factor, even today. So, you know, along the lines of cost and performance, right? You got to think about how much it costs to do things and what performance am I going to get. If you're looking at stock for stock, head for head, then the H22 a lot of times isn't a bad choice. But when you're looking at like doing the H and the F, if you do a full-on swap for the car instead of doing H2B or whatnot, you're looking at doing the same kind of modifications that you would do for a K swap. And I think at the end of the day, I know for a fact at the end of the day, the only real gain you're getting over doing the H versus K is that the tunability for the ECU, unlike where the K Pro situation that you need for K. So not to rehash H versus anything, I'm going to talk about why it doesn't get the fair shake that people think that it doesn't, right? And I guess this is kind of re-talking about what I've already talked about before. Just going to kind of be a little bit more of a condensed version for people who constantly say, why is the H22 overlooked? The H22 overlooked. You don't talk about the H22. And it is really because of the cylinder liners. I think is a huge part. When you got to think about if you really want the best way to make the most power, out of it, you have to re-sleeve the block. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You got to go around if you want to use forged pistons. So now in another older H22 video, to get around the whole problem of using the H22 and rebuilding one, if you don't want to do the G23 route, which I think is a great route, then you need to. Then I would suggest using Nippon Racing's pistons, because they're cast pistons. Now it's not straight cast. There's another different metals that they use in there, so I can't really say 100% for sure if those pistons are going to be less damaging to the sleeves, the FRMs, than a forged piston would be. That would be something that I would like to try out someday. But I don't have an R&D fucking department and team, and you guys see how long it takes me to put together a car. So me going out there and testing this is something that is just it probably won't happen. Unless we're talking about 5 or 6 years from down the line, I'm making a lot more money. I have a crew. If that gets to the point, then yes, I would like to test this. There's a lot of things I would like to test that I can't. But with that being said, too, I still have a strong faith that it would be a successful thing. I think that the Nippon Racing pistons would be a good alternative route for that. But at the end of the day, to really talk about it, I think that probably the best route would be to use the G23, because the F23 block is compatible with the H22 head, so you get the big head, but you don't have to worry about the restrictions of the sleeves being FRM. So it opens up the possibilities to do a lot more things. But guys, you have to understand that the H22 as a project, the chassis is as far as the Accord and whatnot, and the Prelude. So it's not as easy to just drop it in there. If you want to do H2B, that's fine, but you're still paying. You're still, like, okay, say like for a reputable H2B kit, you're looking at $600, right? Now, I think you can get cheaper H2B kits for 400 and change, and I wouldn't be against using that because at the end of the day, it's a conversion plate. It's a piece of metal cut to match, so that way you can put these two things together. So, me using a cheaper version versus using a more expensive version, I'll go with the cheaper one. I don't feel any kind of bad about that. All right, but if you're gonna put the performance and cost head to head versus the K series, and I may not have mentioned that in that video, but at the end, I think the make or break really comes down to that. The two big things that make it more expensive and less viable, right? The K Pro makes the K expensive because the rest of it nowadays isn't that expensive. Now, I think that you could say the same thing for the H22 swap. If you want to do an H22 swap in a Civic or an Integra or whatnot, you're looking at the H2B kit. That's going to be your X factor there. If you're looking at $450 to $600 for the H2B kit. So just to run out with the B series transmission to make it much easier to swap in, so you don't have to do all the extra shit. So if you're gonna do one of those two swaps, then I would say that the K series is definitely the way to go. It's relatively the same in price, and it's fucking infinitely more easily to make power than compared to the H. There's just so many more options. You know, NA, yes, you can comparably make high numbers with the K, but once you start talking about forced induction and booster and whatnot, it's just, you know, the options are astronomically better because, you know, forged pistons and rods are much easier to come, or forged pistons isn't a big thing. You don't have to re-sleeve the block to use it. Also, I do think at the end of the day, NA, the K series does whip the H22's ass as well, because even though the H22 with the big displacement is capable of making big numbers in A, and we've seen that before, and I've discussed it on that playlist, it's just much easier to do with the K series because the head is just that much better. So guys, this is kind of just a call out to say, hey, I have talked about H22 before. There's a whole playlist. Go check it out. And for those of you guys that, you know, consistently come back to the channel and talk about H and F are underrated. They're not underrated. They're just not practical because the FRM sleeve problem, and just because difficulty in the swap. It's not a practical build, and that's the reason why it doesn't get its fair shake. 9 out of 10 times, guys, when people are looking for a swap in their car, they're going to go the easy route, and I would do the same myself. Now, again, like I say about a lot of builds, would I be willing to build one of those later on down the line? Absolutely, for sure. I'm looking forward to it, but it's not going to be a priority when there's just things that are easier to come by out there that will do better in the long run. All right, guys. So hope that clears the air on H22 a little bit. Thanks for watching, and peace.